Let me touch on the Justice for All campaign. How many of you are familiar or know what Justice for All is about? Okay, a handful of you do. In summary, it was this. In 2003, there was a motorcycle crash in South Dakota. It involved a sitting congressman, the only congressman from South Dakota, a gentleman by the name of William Jenklow. And he blew a stop sign. And the long and short of it is a gentleman from Minnesota by the name of Randy Scott happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And when William Jenklow came through the stop sign at some undetermined speed, never slowed down apparently, Randy Scott hit the back of his Cadillac in the driver's side passenger door, a rear door. Randy Scott was killed almost instantly. William Jenklow was eventually charged and convicted of 1 felony and 3 misdemeanors. His fine for killing a motorcyclist was 100 days in jail. Loss of his law license for 3 years. Suspension of his driver's license for 3 years. And about a $10,000 fine when you consider everything else that was involved. A lot of people at the time felt he was getting special treatment. And by the way, he did resign from Congress. But a lot of people felt 100 days in jail was inadequate. And some states, particularly the motorcyclist rights organizations, had said, let's take a look at our laws. In the case of a failure to yield the right-of-way that results in death or serious injury, what are the consequences? And I'm ashamed to say in the state of Ohio, when we looked at ours, regardless of the outcome, if you're charged with failure to yield the right-of-way and not charged with anything more severe, the maximum penalty, regardless of the outcome, $150 fine, 30 hours community service. That's it. If you are charged and convicted of failure to yield the right-of-way, maximum 150, 30 days or 30 hours community service. If you look at other states, some were even worse. It's considered a traffic offense. And so people said, how can this be? How can it be that I run a stop sign, take a life, permanently injure somebody, and face these kinds of minimum penalties? And the answer is, that's the way the law is. And so a number of rider groups in particular said the law must change. And so starting in about 2002, even before the William Jenklow incident, and unfortunately many of these are precipitated as a result of personal tragedy. That in the state of Virginia, a mother lost her son as a result of a right-of-way crash. And so she was the first one who actually lobbied that we can determine to enhance the penalties when this kind of a crash results in serious injury or death. And she single-handedly was able to get that done in the state of Virginia. Of course, the motorcycling community rallied around her, but she was the one that was persistent and got it done. The other states that I've listed here through the years, you can see 03, 04, 05, the big year was 06. Of the 20 states that considered legislation to toughen penalties for failure to yield the right-of-way, and in some cases it was negligent driving, careless driving, however you want to call it. Of the 20 states that considered it in the 05-06 session, 9 states passed their bills. Very significant. In 07, oh, this thing's jumping ahead on me. In 07, there was only one state, state of Tennessee, and this year in the state of Maryland, they got their bill passed. The common thread is that it takes personal tragedy. In the case of Maryland, Marty Schultz, who was the director of ABATE Maryland, was killed in a right-of-way crash in August of 2006. And it's ironic because ABATE Maryland was the one that was pushing this bill for years in the state. And it took the loss of their state director to get legislators to say, oh, okay, now I get it. That's really unfortunate. But again, for those states that were promoting it, for those rider organizations that were involved in it, and for the ones who succeeded, congratulations. For the ones who didn't make it, again, many of them proposed. Jay mentioned about ABATE of Indiana being primarily responsible for a right-of-way bill that didn't make it through your legislature. Consider all the other things the legislature has to deal with. Frankly, this is not a high issue with a lot of them until you have a lobby day, until it affects them personally, until you're there saying, as a constituent, this is why this bill is important to me and my family. So I would encourage you, if the Board of Directors of ABATE of Indiana says, we're going to go back in with a right-of-way bill in 09, please get behind this. And how we can help is with resources that we have for our AMA members in the state of Indiana is to promote this information to them. Because not all AMA members are ABATE of Indiana members. And maybe we can change that by the groups working together. We can't be here like you are. but we can get it out to an audience that maybe is not part of the ABATE of Indiana audience. So again, if Jay and the board of directors decide that this is a way they want to go, please get behind this kind of legislation. Don't make it that it's a personal tragedy going to the State House and pleading with your legislator, because I lost a family member, this is why this bill is so important. Are there any questions on the right-of-way or the Justice for All campaign or right-of-way legislation in general before I move on? Okay, it jumped ahead on me, and I'm going to tell you what the tie-in is. Interestingly enough, this situation occurred in California in September. For those of you who are kind of news junkies like I am, I heard about the train crash. It was a commuter train in California. And the crux of it is they believe that the engineer of the commuter train was using a cell phone or text message system while he was operating the train. And this article was early in the investigation, and subsequently they determined that the engineer was text messaging, and they have evidence that 1 minute prior to the crash he was actually communicating with somebody on a handheld unit. There's already a prohibition for the train engineers in California to use these devices, but why is this so stunning? Well, the reason is 25 people died in this crash. And it's ironic because the motorcycling community for years has been saying distracted, inattentive driving is taking us 1 and 2 at a time. But it takes a tragedy like this for the state legislature, for the NTSB, to start investigating and acknowledging that distracted or inattentive driving is a serious situation with serious consequences. But all too often, legislators blow it off. It's a really complicated issue. And the reason I put it here, it's in the handout, is what I'd like to do is get motorcyclists to have this discussion, because I can assure you, based on the number of bills we saw filed nationwide this year, this issue is going to come up in every legislature in new session. And I'll give you an idea of the bills that they've looked at already. I'm not going to go through them in detail. The scheme is anything in red failed. Anything in yellow is still in play. Anything in green passed. Look at the categories. And this is where the discussion needs to be. What's the appropriate kind of legislation distracted driving? Because frankly, a lot of right-of-way violations result in somebody not paying attention. How many people have heard, I didn't see the motorcyclist?
Yes.
Well, if you're not looking for the motorcycle, you won't see it. How many people have heard in a crash say, well, I didn't see the semi, I didn't see the dump truck, I didn't see the cement mixer? They're not looking for it. And any kind of distracted driving, whether it's cell phone, texting, eating a sandwich, reading the newspaper, doing all of the above, and people try to do that. It's amazing, and I don't have to tell you, Ohio is horrible, maybe Indiana's better. I doubt it. What people do behind the wheel of a car, it's everything but driving. Look at these categories of what was considered this time in the legislature. Distracted, inattentive driving, okay, that's kind of general. Hands-free use only. Ask anybody from the state of New York how successful that legislation has been. They've had a hands-free law in the state of New York for many years. The problem is enforcement. The cops have bigger things to do than pull somebody over for using a handheld cell phone. So the enforcement issue becomes an issue there. Here's a good one. Under age 17, restrict cell phone use. Now, I'm not law enforcement. I'm certainly not clairvoyant, but I can't look at somebody and say, well, they're under 17. I'm going to pull them over. They're on a cell phone. And then there's all the other permutations that go along with this. Under 18, under 19, under 21, the list goes on. How can you in law enforcement make a determination what the age of those people are? You can't. So when this kind of legislation comes up and legislators debate it, it becomes an enforcement issue. And again, I'll go back to what I said. So much of the right-of-way violations are a direct result of people not paying attention. This issue has to be discussed. We have to talk about what the remedies are for getting people aware of what's going on in the roadway. But these may not be the answer.